The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're coming to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the home for Autism Live. It is also the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Thrilled to be here with you on this lovely Wednesday afternoon. We're keeping a good thought for all of you who are on the East Coast of the United States as you buckle down for this hurricane that has us all a little bit on edge, but we're hoping that you're taking all the measures that you need to do to make sure that you are someplace safe and that you have things to get you through until such time as services can be restored. I'm always nervous when they talk about these things because you never know how big it's going to be or how bad it's going to be, but especially when it's the autism community and our autism kiddos, let's take every precaution to give yourself the best chance of hopefully it'll be nothing and you can return home and everybody will have had a little strange vacation. But we're keeping a good thought for all of you. We've got a big show for you here this morning. We're going to start out in the first hour and have the fabulous Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh with us. She's going to be answering your questions in real time. And then in the second hour, my buddy, Nancy Alspaugh Jackson, will be here. She's the Executive Director of Autism Care and Treatment Today. We do a show called Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We've got some great guests. We've got Vince Redmond here with us. He's a licensed marriage and family therapist who used to be a behavioral therapist. So what an amazing combination to be able to have a resource for families. He's going to be answering more of your questions. And then we've got a couple who have started a bookstore in New Jersey with the express purpose of creating jobs for individuals who are on the autism spectrum. How much do we love that? That is called the Maple Woods, New Jersey Bookstore. So we'll be talking with them a little bit later on. This entire show is meant to be interactive. We hope that you will write in and tell us your questions, your comments, your concerns. Samantha is going to show you right now some of the ways that you can connect with us. While she does that, I want to remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. When you go on that site, all you have to do is click on the little triangle on the computer screen and that starts the live show playing, or it will start the most recently recorded live show playing. To the side of all that is something we call the live feature. You put your cursor in the box that says your question, you type and you hit enter. There's no login, there's no password, there's no proving that you're not a bot. I hate those things with a passion. You don't have to do that. But it does take a couple of minutes for it to get to the satellite and bounce back down to us. So I always say ask your questions early in the segment. We'll get to as many as we can. You know that we never get to all of them because so many people want an opportunity to talk with our next guest, the fabulous expert, Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh, which is my cue to say to you it's time for Ask Dr. Doreen.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen.
Welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen. As I said, we have Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh here with us, and she's got some very fun hair going on
Yes,
today.
I do, yes.
I love it. There are not very many people who can pull this off, right?
Well,
but you can.
Well, I just, when I travel, especially when I travel to humid places, it becomes just too much work.
I hear you.
And so we just came back from, of course, our company retreat for manager level, so the supervisors and the operations managers. So there was about 400 people with us on a cruise to Mexico, and of course, I had sort of a very messy hair there. And then part of the whole thing was that everybody in Mexico, a whole lot of people were getting their hair braided, so I decided to do it, and it's going to last me now a few weeks.
I love it.
Yeah,
I absolutely love it. I think it's divine.
Different.
And I get it because I have hair that I keep it really short now because otherwise I look like a bush woman. If I walk by something that's moist,
Oh, yeah.
it's just crazy.
Yeah.
So I can understand. I could never keep my hair as long as you do. I would stop traffic because my hair would be in the way. So we don't want to do that. I want to say though, for those of you that are new to the show, Dr. Grandpichet is a true expert in the field of autism. She has now been working in this field for 40 years. We can officially say it's more than 40 years. I know she doesn't look it, but there it is nonetheless. And has been working with individuals all across the spectrum of all abilities, of all ages, from very young babies up through senior citizens. I know some of you write in and say, but what about, adults? And she has a vast amount of experience working with adults as well in all areas. And one of the things that I love about her the most is that she really gets it, that this is a community and that there is a family who is standing in solidarity with this individual and that everybody has needs.
Absolutely.
And I also love that you look at the individual that is on the autism spectrum as an individual and as a whole person, that it's not just what's happening because autism is a part of things, but there are other things going on that may dovetail into the autism but aren't the autism, and you're interested in those things as well.
Definitely.
Where we see a lot of doctors who are like, well, that's autism.
Right.
And end of story, period, and as if you should just accept that and move on, and there's not a discussion to be had, and that is so very not you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So again, Dr. Grandpichet is answering your questions. You can write into us on Facebook, YouTube. You can also write in on our live feature. I want to start with, I actually have two questions that were written in, and I'm going to paraphrase them because we want to preserve anonymity. But I have been asked expressly by a viewer to have you talk about how do we help young people, of all ages and all abilities, including people who are nonverbal, to be able to tell when someone has touched them inappropriately.
Right.
Big topic.
Very, very big topic, and very, very difficult topic because it really involves a judgment. Because, of course, I guess, so I'm just like trying to solve this as I speak, so thinking out loud, really. Yeah. Because it's, even with typically developing kids, you can shape their belief system in a way that will influence what they consider to be appropriate or inappropriate. So, and in fact, in different cultures, different things will be appropriate or inappropriate. That line moves, right?
Well, even with age,
And
because
with age,
if
of
a
course.
baby walks up to you and puts their hand on your breast, that is a vastly different thing than if someone who is 45 walks up to you and does that.
Absolutely. And the reverse true as well.
Yes.
So like a little girl might be walking around in their underwear and that's totally fine, whereas an adult, of course, can't do that. So all the rules change with age, with culture, with gender. As much as we'd like to say they don't, they do. So, no, you don't see women walking around taking their shirt off in the heat, right? So there's a lot of differences. So I think it's easier to, instead of trying to teach all the rules, I think it becomes more relevant to teach the rules that pertain to that particular individual given that particular age and circumstance. So let's say if you are dealing with someone who is 6 years old and a male, and what you would like to teach them is going to be very different than what you teach, let's say, an 18-year-old female.
Yes.
And so, and also let's assume that this is in our culture here, but even if you look at in the US, there are liberal areas and very conservative areas, and there are culturally different beliefs and religiously different beliefs. So everything we teach has to be appropriate to the family. So first thing is that the person teaching, I think, should identify what the rules are. you know, is it okay for some, how, you know, what are the things that are fine and what are the things that are not fine? And really then when it's black and white like that, you will teach that.
Okay.
And so we have, you know, let's say as an example, like, and you have to break this down into extreme detail. So what I would do is I would probably start with 2 lists, which is like the things that are okay and the things that are not okay. And then each of those lists will probably divide multiple times. So what is okay for someone else to do to me if they are male? What is okay for someone else to do to me if they are female?
Okay.
And then each of those will break further into what is okay for, let's say, the female to do to me if I know them versus if I don't know them. And then that in itself will break into, like, so a prerequisite for this would be, we have a lesson called Levels of Friendship. Yeah. So I think that is very important. And that lesson teaches our child how to differentiate what's appropriate for someone who's a, let's say, very close relative to a stranger, all the way to a stranger, so a friend or an acquaintance or someone my parents know and a stranger. And so there will be certain things that are just not okay no matter who it is, right? So
of course.
Body parts that cannot be touched by anyone else. And then there are, unless they're like helping you wash it, and then there are only these particular people. So, you know, very, very clear rules.
Yeah.
And then there are things that are okay for some people and not others. So for instance, let's say someone helping me get dressed might be able to help me do, you know, put together my underwear or whatever, my bra, or let's say that sort of thing. But someone that is an acquaintance or a stranger or, you know, not one of these people is not allowed. You know, let's say an acquaintance might be allowed to touch me on my hand or perhaps at most on my shoulder, but not anywhere else, you know. So it's a process, and it's very difficult because, you know, these teaching, and Evelyn always speaks to this, it's easy to teach our kids or our adults black and white rules. It's not so easy when you try to teach them gradients, you know, and like judgment calls. So this is one of those situations where it's just very, very difficult to teach the person to make a judgment call. So I would, and it's scary, to be honest with you, because the child might, or the adolescent or adult might actually say something that or like might misinterpret someone's intentions and get that person in trouble as well. So we want to be very, very careful about this particular issue and try to just help the individual just adhere to a certain number of rules.
But it's extensive, and I'm having a coughing fit. Let's take a break.
Let's take a quick break. We'll be back.
And then we'll be back.
Hey guys, for the month of September, I figured I'd show you guys how to make a task completion chart to help your kids get through the hardest parts of the day. Parents have been writing into our host, Shannon Penrod, the hardest parts of the day are waking up in the morning, after school, and getting ready for bed. Please keep in mind you can always modify the task completion chart to focus on the skills that your family needs most. The template we'll be using today to make the task completion chart you can find at facebook.com/autism-live. All right, let's get to it. The materials you'll be needing are the template, cardstock, scissors, hole puncher, glue, pipe cleaner, Velcro, and photos or images. We find it more reinforcing for kids if you use images of themselves doing the tasks that you're trying to get them to complete. So what I have here to start off are photos of myself doing all the tasks that we're going to add to our task completion chart today. The first step you're going to be doing is printing the template from facebook.com/autism-live. I have it here, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim at the top. We don't need that, that's just totally excess. Now that I trim my 3 templates, I'm going to label each one with a different part of the day that we're focusing on, such as waking up, after school, and getting ready for bed. Now that I finished labeling the templates with the appropriate time of the day, I'm going to attach the photos that go with it. For bedtime, the tasks I chose were getting ready for school, putting away toys, putting on pajamas, and brushing teeth. Now repeat this for all the rest of the day. Now that I've added the photos to the template, I am taking this along with my heavy cardstock to hold all my tokens. I'm going to line them up and make 3 hole punches. I'm going to take this pipe cleaner and attach the pages together with it. We're almost done putting this together. Next, I'm going to take my Velcro, I'm going to put them underneath each picture. And then I'm going to add 4 on the very edge too. Now that I've attached the rough side of the Velcro to the template, now I'm going to take the softer side and add these to the tokens. You can use whatever you want for the tokens, whatever your child finds reinforcing. They could be stickers, images, spacemen, Pokemon, whatever they like. Before you use your task completion chart, it's really important that you do a preference assessment to see what your child finds reinforcing that day. Once you have that established, then you can tell them the rule for how this task completion chart works. So every time they get one of their tasks completed, they add a token to it. And the way the task completion chart functions is like a token economy. So after they put a token under each one of these tasks, they can trade it in for their reinforcer for the day. Now that you've made your task completion chart, hopefully your child will be able to use it on a daily basis and help them through those difficult times of the day. Well, until next time, craft on. Bye, guys.
Can you see me flying by your side?
Just go like this. Can you see me? Puedes mirarme aquí? Okay. Hi, I'm Rebecca Ishida. Say hi, Ethan. Hi. My son was diagnosed with autism in November 2004. With Ethan, almost immediately, we noticed things that were troublesome, that he just didn't sleep. He would vomit in the crib. There were a lot of sensory issues.
Then he'd have like 20 of the trains lined up, and if you came in and took one train out, just meltdown completely.
Guttural instinct is to think that there's nothing wrong. Who wants to look at their child and go, there's something wrong with that child? You don't. You always want to see the best in your child.
Will my kid be able to go to school? Will he interact with his peers? Will he be able to have a healthy relationship? Will he get married? I really thought that autism was like a death sentence. A lot of hope was given to me through CARD. This was my 3rd agency and the best agency we had. And there was no way in the world I was going to give up CARD because of the gains I saw Ethan was having.
Yeah, you did it!
And I remember when Doreen saw us for the evaluation, she says, but by the time he's 6, he will be recovered. And that's exactly what happened.
I'll fix that.
Welcome back. I've got a cough drop. I swear that I have allergies, and there's like every once in a while the air conditioner will turn on and there's just like a little fuzz ball.
Yeah.
And I breathe with my mouth open and I inhale a fuzz ball. TMI. Let's get back to business. So when we were last with you, Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet was talking about the many things we have to consider when teaching an individual what is appropriate versus what isn't appropriate in terms of, it's not a black and white thing. It's a really hard thing, not something you would expect to teach in a weekend. It's probably something you're going to take the rest of your life and work on. When I look at the gradations of just looking at the Me Too, all the ways that adults who are not on the spectrum have different criteria for saying, you know, this is appropriate, this isn't appropriate. When we watch people's reactions to, you know, how people react to allegations against people, it's been very enlightening, I think, for the world to see. So if it's that difficult for adults who aren't on the spectrum and who are able to do perspective taking, then what would it be like for our kiddos
Exactly.
who are on the spectrum and perspective taking is maybe not their thing? So you mentioned a lot of things. I loved that you talked about a lesson in skills called Levels of Friendship, because I think that's a great place to start, and it's useful for other things.
Definitely, definitely.
So it's not just about teaching what's appropriate, but it lays the groundwork for, you know, them to have an understanding of other things. But I want to also hone in on, once you've started to teach these things, how do you get someone who is nonverbal to report it?
Yeah, so, and there's one other thing I want to mention about this, as you said this, because I think a lot of parents when we teach our typically developing kids this particular thing, we often tell them something like, tell us if it doesn't feel right. Anything that doesn't feel right, you should report. And I just want to make sure parents realize that I don't think that instruction works with our kids on the spectrum, because I think the things that don't feel right are very different for our kids.
What a great point.
So don't try that as an instructional technique, like telling a child report what doesn't feel right if it's a child on the spectrum will be quite different, I think, because our kids have a very different sensory regulation process, right? And I think a lot of things don't feel right to them.
Right.
Lights, sounds, touch might actually feel right to them. So, you know, holding and hugs might feel good to them. So that's probably not the right way to go.
Good point.
Yeah,
Great point.
so that's one thing. Once you've identified the rules in terms of just the people and what is the people and the location, right, of the touching and the type of touching, perhaps. Once you've done that, the question you asked now, Shannon, is how do you report that? And I think, like anything else, for even for our nonverbal children, nonverbal adults, let's say the most severely affected by the spectrum, you know, it's a matter of just teaching a particular sign or icon that is representative of alarm.
Okay.
And really, that's all it is. So it doesn't matter if if it's possible, obviously, to identify the alarm and the picture of the person, that is best. But, you know, most important, I think, is to just start by teaching, you know, if any of these rules are broken, like if it is someone who is, let's say, you don't know them and they've touched you in a body part that they shouldn't have, then indicate by going to a trusted person, right, a family member, and showing the sign for an alarm.
Wonderful.
And that's really all you can do at this point.
And in the Levels of Friendship, I think what a great, and I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that that's available in Skills.
Yes, it is.
And you can go to skillsforautism.com to see more. There's also a whole safety protocol in there that I think is really critical for any parent of any child on the spectrum to go through.
That's right. It just is a process. You have to, it takes a while to teach your child what it means what a stranger means, as opposed to someone who's an acquaintance, as opposed to someone who's a friend. Like those things we have definitions for, and Skills talks about that a lot more. But it is a long process. It takes quite a while.
There are so many shades to it and so many different ways that it interconnects. So, but it's important to get started.
That's right. And, you know, I have to say that, like, for us at CARD, one of the safety is such a critical thing for us. And so, you know, until you are able to do this, I would say as a parent, we all worry about where our kids are, what are they doing, regardless of their functioning age or whatever it is. We all worry about our kids, right? If you have a child who has the level of severity of the disability is so strong that you're worried that they could be in some way harmed and not even tell you about it, I really recommend that you look at all the technology that's out there. You know, at CARD we have cameras in our clinics, and we're adding more and more cameras as we can afford it, because we feel the more cameras we have running live in any, all of our hallways, rooms, everywhere is more important, is very important to the safety of our kids. But, you know, nowadays you have body cams, like you can easily purchase a camera that your child can have on their body, like literally as on their belt at all times, or you know, those types of things are very, very possible. If your child goes to, let's say, or if your adult goes to either a school or a day center or something, just have a camera installed that is facing your child, and you can receive notifications. You can drop in. Just here's the easiest: is get an Alexa and plug it in wherever your child is, and log into the wireless, and you can drop in on your child anytime.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I mean, you have to get the place to agree to it, but you know, I always had the feeling as a teacher, I always said my door is always open.
That's
Anybody
right.
can walk in at any time.
That's right.
And you know, I would say to parents, come on in. Because we're not doing anything here that anybody can't come and
That's
see.
right. That's right.
And if you have somebody who is really opposed, for me, that's a red flag.
I agree. I think, well, sometimes people just oppose things without giving it any thought just because they're so rule governed themselves.
Yes.
But I agree. If you can't convince them, if I were you, if someone doesn't give me permission, I would either look for another placement, or if I can't find another placement, I would actually go get a spy cam.
There you go.
And I would put it on my child. I mean, there are pens that are running, that are recording the entire time.
But of course, I have to give the legal disclaimer now that we're not recommending that you do that, because that might be illegal where you are.
Yes.
But we're just saying, hypothetically, if it were us, we might.
That's right. I just, for the protection of my child, I would want to make sure. That's right.
There's nothing
And it is
more
very
important.
suspicious if someone says, no, you're not allowed to.
Not allowed
It's
to.
the same as when I always used to say it's extremely strange to me that schools only allow people in for 20 minutes at a time.
I know,
It's
it
like,
drives me crazy.
why do you even need to know when I'm dropping in?
Somebody has written in and said, do they allow body cams at school? And I think it's very likely that in every state that they don't, quote unquote, allow them.
Ask. Why don't you ask? You should ask.
But I will say this, that there have been many parents who have taken the step because they weren't sure about the safety of their child, dropped the tape recorder in the backpack, which was illegal.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, I need to know if my child is okay.
Yes.
And I'm not recommending it, right? But I'm saying I completely understand why, you know, and I might be in jail later on for something like this related to this, because I could see myself doing this going, I need to know.
I need to know if my child's safe.
They drop the recorder in and send the child off to school. And then what happens is they hear what's happening and they take it to the school board. Now, you can get charges filed against you for breaking the law, bringing the tape recorder, but the bigger issue is that the school has a problem. If you get the recorder back and everything's fine, nobody would ever be any of the wiser, right?
Yes, but also you have to, I think these laws are all changing because everyone has this, right?
That's
and
right.
everyone who is able to can just hit video and record whatever around them. In fact, think about the number of people who are in the background when you video anything.
Exactly.
So privacy has become a whole different thing now. And I don't know that, I'm pretty sure the rules regarding this are changing very, very rapidly because, of course, the companies that own these kind of body cams and videos, cameras, and phones and so on fight for the right to videotape what's going on around you.
Absolutely. So, you know, but I think right now, but I think it's pretty safe to say that schools that they do have a policy against body cams. But
I actually don't know.
But I don't know what I would do or not do to ensure that my child was safe and not, you know, so there we have it. But not recommending that you do anything. Legal disclaimer. Okay, I want to move on to the next question. We had a mom who wrote in and said that she's got a teenage daughter, and that the daughter is obsessed with watching Elmo videos and watching videos of kids that are screaming and having tantrums. And she thinks that she's addicted to it, and she said, help, what do I do to get her onto something that's more age appropriate? or fill the need some other way that isn't quite so not age appropriate.
Right. So I would. There's I don't know, several thoughts. First is always as a behaviorist, you have to ask yourself why. What is the function? So what is she getting out of it? And this might be very hard to figure out, but I would test it. I would see if it's the sound or it's the visual. Which one is it that's intriguing her more? Whichever one it is, let's assume it's the sound. If it's the sound, it's perhaps you, and maybe that's why also Elmo, I don't know, because Elmo's voice is very high.
Pitched, yeah.
Maybe she's seeking out a high pitch type of thing, I don't know. But if you could find an alternative that is a little bit more appropriate, perhaps very high pitched music, perhaps different types of music that sound more to us like screaming. Like, I have to tell you, there are, obviously I sometimes I'll listen, like, you're changing channels and you'll come across like a hard rock or one of those like metal or something channels, and it sounds like someone screaming, right? Yeah. So that's music. Okay, so I don't know if any of those types of things would be an appropriate replacement for the child.
My son went through the phase 2 years ago where on YouTube what he was watching was the goat screaming videos. Have you seen these?
Yes.
Where they take a song where it gets really high and they cut to a goat screaming for the notes, and we all would just laugh our heads off. It's very much a teenage thing.
Yeah.
I wonder if that would be thrilling. It's
Exactly.
annoying though.
Yeah.
After a while, it's
absolutely.
very annoying.
But so the concept, regardless, whether it's something that hopefully, preferably, it's something that provides the same satisfaction to your child. So it has the same function, let's put it that way. If not, you just pick something that is otherwise satisfying. And there's always things in life that are high rewarding and low rewarding, right? So this particular thing right now that you want to get rid of, whether it's, be honest with you, the Elmo is more appropriate than children tantruming, right? Watching children tantruming. So I don't know if it's the same person asking this question.
It is.
So I would probably eliminate children tantruming altogether and try to replace it with other types of things that are have the same function but are more appropriate. Having said that, the way to do that is to it's like feeding. It's the same thing where you give a small amount of the unpreferred object and then reinforce it with a large amount of the preferred object, and over time you reverse that. So in this case, what you would do is you would have your child first actually be required, in order to watch Elmo, let's say, or in order to watch the tantruming children, she would have to watch, let's say, 1 minute of something appropriate first. So 1 minute of something that you choose, followed by 5 minutes of something she chooses. And then over time, you change that and you make it 2 minutes or 1.5 minutes of yours and 4.5 minutes of hers. 2 minutes of yours and 4 minutes of hers. And you do this very gradually over time so that the child becomes satisfied with maybe, when you get to a point where you're at 5 or 10 minutes of the good thing for 1 minute of the annoying thing, then you start to skip the annoying thing and go every other day. And gradually it becomes that she's actually watching more of the appropriate things. But one of the things I have found really important, Shannon, and that's the PREMAC principle, is
right.
Using a reinforcing thing, that you want to eliminate actually as the reinforcer. But the thing that I found is that a lot of our kids are highly, highly reinforced by being able to search on YouTube and look at different things. And I feel strongly that they should have the right to do that. I feel like our kids all do that. We do that. Yeah. I think it would be, but the appropriateness of what's on there is very important. So it's really important to have someone with them scanning through things and just immediately deleting or eliminating or moving to the next thing if you come across something inappropriate. I was always very, I'm still worried about that because my kids are all over the internet and they're not kids anymore, but still, you never want to see something horrific,
Right.
and there are some horrific things out there. So that's basically the only thing. But if someone can accompany the child and let them scan, I'm pretty sure she'll find other things that are more appropriate as well.
And there are ways on the phones and on the iPads that you can set general limits for some things that they can't find. It's not going to catch everything. And then there are ways that you can set specific websites that they will no longer be able to get into.
Very easily done. The other thing is, because both of the things you mentioned have sound associated with them, I'm thinking there's something, she might be seeking out a particular pitch of sound, and it might be that is the sound that she hears the best. Don't forget, our kids are very selective. Some kids are very selective in the sensory input. So it might be something that she's seeking because of that selectivity.
So you get a little Guns N' Roses music and see if she likes that.
Metallica.
And Metallica. And there we go. Things that I don't like because I don't like that. That's a whole other story. But let's take a break, and then we're going to come back with more of your questions that you guys have been writing in on YouTube and Facebook. Stick with us. Parent to parent, you might be asking yourself, how on earth can I afford ABA therapy for my child? Well, the short answer is you can't. No one can. It's really expensive and it's overwhelming to most families. But the story doesn't end there, fortunately. The first thing that I want you to think about is tapping insurance resources. So many insurance companies are paying for ABA therapy right now. So that's your first best bet. Make sure and see if your insurance company is providing benefits for ABA therapy, and check back often. Now, if you see that you don't have insurance right now for ABA, don't panic, there are still other resources. The next place to go is to your local support groups and ask them what local resources there are. That's a great place to ask for information because often states and even counties have support for ABA. And then beyond that, you might consider applying for grants. There are many fabulous grants out there to help you to get support for your ABA therapy. But most important, it's absolutely essential that you get ABA services for your child. We know that that's essential for all of our children and that you won't be able to do it on your own. So seek out those services and support groups that will help you to fund your ABA journey. It's really important to remember that all behaviors happen for a reason.
Hello, fellow activists. Last week, I introduced you to step 5 of the 10 steps to empowerment, shore up spiritually. Let's talk more about finding ways to do that, how to find out what lifts your spirit, feeds your soul, and make it a practice. That practice is different things for different people. It could be the practice of meditation, of prayer, of community worship, or serving others. But it's the practice that will give you hope and faith and strength for the journey ahead, for the marathon journey of raising a child with autism. I get inspired every day by the families of children with autism that I come into contact with, like the parents of the nonverbal child who have not given up hope that that child will speak one day, or the grandparents who should be enjoying their retirement but instead are joyfully raising their adult grandchild with autism, or the mother who is fighting for services for her daughter while her Marine husband is fighting a battle to keep our country safe. They all inspire me. My grandmother, Diddy, who is an angel who still guides me every day, had this quote inscribed in her Bible. I sought my soul, but my soul I could not see. I sought my God, but my God eluded me. I sought my brother, and I found all three. I think I'm finally starting to grasp the meaning of that. So feed your soul, lift your spirit, and until next time, keep the faith.
Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here with Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet, and she is answering your questions in real time. We had some questions that came in on YouTube specifically for this one. Hi, how often do you see hyperactivity in autism? My son is 5, going to ABA 30 hours. Now I've got it. Lately, I feel like his hyperactivity is more of a challenge, especially in public school.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So how often do
Very
you see?
often.
Very often, right?
Extremely often. So it is a very common thing that we have ADHD going on at the same time as autism, and it's very hard to diagnose because obviously autism overrides ADHD. So once you have the autism diagnosis, no one's paying attention to the fact that your child otherwise would have an ADHD diagnosis. So yeah, hyperactivity is super common. Sometimes it's at the point where it's very, very difficult to get under control, and we then would recommend medications that assist in getting it under control. I mean, I know sometimes parents are very much against medication, but you know, throughout the entire course of my education, every disability, no matter what it was, whether it was ADHD, anxiety, depression, you name it, whatever it was, the research shows that the best solution is a combination of medical and behavioral. It always is. Mm-hmm. So in some cases, the hyperactivity is controllable, right? So if your child is under control and able to sit and pay attention during the 30 hours of ABA, then it tells us that he or she is controllable and that the school staff need to be trained better, or he needs to have a one-to-one shadow with him. If he's still also extremely hyperactive during ABA, then I would really recommend that you talk to a physician and try to look at supplementing with some ADHD medications that might help him calm down a little bit.
And I always like to throw in there that dietary, get as organic as possible because of the pesticides. We already know, the studies have shown that pesticides, even a small amount of pesticides, can exacerbate ADHD behaviors.
Definitely, and particularly the pesticides, food colorings and additives, sugar. There's a ton of stuff in our diet that influences our activity level, for sure.
And I know people don't like that and they get uncomfortable when I say that, because none of us wants to have our colors and our sugars and all these things taken away from us and be relegated to an organic diet. There are people who think this is the end of the earth and they might fall off. I don't mean to make fun. But the example that I always give is go to a birthday party where there are kids that are typical.
Yes.
And because I've done this many times because my kid couldn't have cake, and you're there at the birthday party and you're seeing the kids all interact with each other and they have all these capabilities and they're having such a good time, and then we bring out the cake and the cake has all this artificial food coloring on it and it's not organic, and everybody sings, we cut the cake, and everybody's extra happy.
Yes.
And they're showing each other all the colors on their tongue, and everybody is so excited because everybody's in the sugar buzz. And set your watch for 15 minutes and watch it turn into a nightmare,
zoo, followed by exhaustion and
people hysterical and crying, and everybody and it's like the timer goes off on the party and everybody disperses and goes home. But you could have the cake at the beginning of the party and the same thing would happen because their little bodies can't handle that much sugar and color and pesticide. Oh my goodness. Okay, off my soapbox now. Should we take another break?
No, we're good.
Okay, we're good. Okay, so another person on YouTube said, how to make my 5-year-old to be more talkative and have a back and forth conversation. He only mans and labels. And we hear this a lot because a lot of people are doing a lot of speech therapy, and those speech and language pathologists, they'll work on the manding, they'll work on the labeling, but it's like they don't know how to get to the back and forth.
Yeah.
I will say skills, but
I mean, that's really the answer, because we can't assume that a child will start to develop the skills involved in conversation just by learning labels. There's a ton of stuff they have to learn, and it's not just so I'll just give you examples of what we do in skills and in our curriculum. You start with labels, obviously, and labels are great, but then you will need to go on to action items, so verbs, and then you will definitely need to teach more content, which are things like attributes, so all the big and small and this and that. And then you need to teach other types of adjectives, like all the colors and sizes and so on that can be thrown in. And then you need to absolutely fix the tenses and teach the correct past and future tense. And then you need to make sure that all of the prepositions are in place and the pronouns. And after you've done all of that, you could just form a very basic sentence. And even if you're at the point of forming a pretty basic sentence, with direct object and placement and all of that is correct, you still don't know all the nuances that are involved in social behavior, which have to do with how do I go back and forth, how do I stay on a subject that others are interested in, how do I listen, actually, instead of just plan the next thing I want to say.
Right.
How do I repair a conversation if other people start to walk away? How do I enter a group of people and introduce a conversation? I mean, there's a million things. And these are all lessons that we have broken down and individually detailed in skills. And so really, I would say go to skills, because there are numerous steps. And skills is pretty good. I mean, you would be going into either both the language curriculum and the social curriculum, because conversation really starts to go into the social curriculum. And you just need to follow the order of things, because there's a ton of stuff that you have to teach, and labels are just step one.
Here's the thing, though. I think I remember when we started ABA therapy, and I say this all the time when I'm talking to therapists, that I was all gung-ho. I had met Logan Shepard, and I saw how amazing he was, and I was like, I want CARD, and I want therapy, and we are about to embark on this fabulous journey. And then they came in, and very quickly I saw Touch Car, and I went, Touch Car? Is this what I signed up for? I want him to go to college. Touch Car? Yeah. How are we going to get to college from Touch Car?
Yeah.
And I was incensed. And I hear parents all the time at events, they go, oh, I've seen videos of ABA therapy.
I don't want
robot I don't exactly. I don't want somebody going, touch this.
Yeah.
And this very, and I think it's such a disservice to ABA that we don't ever. Do you remember in the TED Talk recently, a couple of years ago, there was a guy who got funding so that he could set up his cameras all over his house. His wife was pregnant. They had a baby, and they videotaped and audio taped every single moment of the first 2 years of his child's life.
Crazy.
Then they went through and they found every approximation of when this child said water. And they squished it all together so that you could hear all the approximations from when he went, to wa, to wa, to wa. And it took 1.5 years, but then, and this child, you hear it shape up to where he says water. And it's the most amazing thing. And this is
Absolutely,
a neurotypical
that's
child.
Incredible.
But I wish that somebody could do that with ABA
autism. Yeah.
to show how you get from Touch Car. It's so painstaking.
Yeah.
This whole idea of I sat on tenterhooks the first year as they were going through those different things, and they were saying, right, they would label, and then they would teach categories of things. So they would label, and they would show a picture, and he would say, guitar.
Yeah.
But then we taught musical instruments.
Yeah.
And I remember my mother coming to visit, and I had said to her, you can't come until you're ready to be supportive, because we're doing this thing and I need support or silence, right?
Yeah.
And that was hard for her, but she came and she was like, we listened on the monitor and watched on the baby monitor from the other room. And she went, oh, honey, what have you gotten yourself into? This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Because if you don't know, it looks ridiculous. And she was like, oh, sweetheart, I'm sorry. I know I said support or silence, but this is stupid.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, just watch, Mom. And they happened to be working that week on features of things. And I have the videotape. I put it in the show, the Autism Monologues, because it was this whole thing where they taught him a bird, and then they taught him that a bird was an animal, and then they taught him the features of the bird, that the bird had a beak and the bird had wings and whatever. And so there's a moment when Peter Farrig sets the bird in front of him and he says, you know, what is it? And he says, it's a bird, and a bird has wings, all on his own.
Yeah.
He built the language. And my mother was in the other room when that happened, that piece of video, and she stood up and she went, oh my God, it's a miracle. She had been watching for 4 days and she said, why isn't this on the national news? This is the most impressive thing I've ever seen in my life. It's a miracle.
That's amazing.
But in 5 days, she was able to watch the progression. I think most people don't get to see that.
I know.
And so they go, why isn't the language happening? And we tell them, go to skills.
Right.
But I want you to know it's all these little threads you got to weave in.
Absolutely. And that's why, I mean, thank you for explaining it so beautifully, but that's why we request 40 hours.
Of course.
Because there's so many things that have to come together before, you know, if you go ahead and teach a child a very exquisite sentence, all they're learning is that exquisite sentence and nothing else. They're not learning the formula behind how to generate exquisite sentences. That's what ABA does. ABA teaches you that you have choices, but you first need to you have to learn all the tools. Like, this is what I have in my labels list, this is what I have in my verbs, this is what I have in my features and my functions and my attribute, whatever, and these are the ways I can put them together, and now I'm going to select and produce 100 really good sentences.
And that's why it's not robotic at that point, because you're able to draw from all of those things.
Exactly.
You know that an apple can be 2-dimensional, it could be 3-dimensional, it could be green, it could be red. It could be something that Snow White is given, or that turns into applesauce. You have an understanding of what an apple is in the global sense.
Exactly.
And that's what good ABA teaches. But I think when you just watch a snippet, it's impossible to get that.
That's right.
I really wish that if we could take all of our lawmakers and force them to be in a home where children have autism, 1 or 2, for a week, things would be different. There would be different things granted to parents. And then if we force them to be in an ABA center to see what could be done in the ABA center, funding would change.
I know, it's true. You're absolutely right.
If we could just make them 2 weeks of their time.
I mean, my dream was, and really it hasn't happened. I mean, it has happened that we're able to give ABA so much more freely to people in the world. But ideally, this stuff should be in your classrooms. You know, every single child should be receiving this as part of their education. This is their education.
Well, if we even just taught teachers how to deal with behavior. I'm an ex-classroom teacher, and if teachers understood how to deal with behavior, so much more learning would happen for so many more kids, not just the kids on the spectrum,
100%.
but it's the keys to the kingdom. Okay, I have another question here. My 5-year-old is rigid. Small changes trigger his crying. What to do to help him? Do you want to take that after a break, or do you want to go ahead and take it?
We don't really have much time.
That's
so let's
true.
do that.
I've talked too much.
No, not at all. So rigidity is another pretty common feature. And I think, you know, again, this is one of those situations where we have very specific lessons that are in the area of flexibility, they're called, and they are actually in the executive functioning curriculum of skills. And they are, at first, they come across as a little mean, because what we do is we'll take like the child's favorite toy and change the rules, or favorite game and change the rules, or we'll take routines and we'll change the routines, and then we'll heavily reinforce. Bottom line is, rigidity to me is actually a very meaningful thing, because you tend to see a little bit of anxiety. It's sort of a reflection of anxiety, but it's completely fine. It's nothing to worry about. I mean, we all become inflexible when we are anxious in a million different ways. Whether it's a child who is just going to a new school, so they have a certain anxiety and they'll want a routine, they'll just want to follow orders and not necessarily do anything out of the ordinary, as opposed to the child who has no anxiety and is completely comfortable. And then take that all the way up to like the first day of a job, or you name it. I mean, we do this in all our lives. Whenever we are anxious, we follow rigid patterns. So that's definitely a sign of discomfort, or not being familiar enough with the environment, the task, or whatever it is. but it's easy enough to get rid of, because really what you do is, with familiarity, that sort of thing tends to go away. With our kids, you just have to block the rigidity and change their pattern. And sometimes you have to do it a million times. I mean, sometimes our kids will always prefer the same thing. And what you do is you allow it, but you allow it mixed in with other things, and you just don't allow it. It's a breaking of the pattern, essentially.
And I love that you said, in the beginning, it looks like we're being cruel because we're changing the rules on them.
Yeah.
But I want to point out that when people don't do that, and don't do that when kids are younger, then they have the anxiety when they're older and they don't have the tools. And I always like to remind people that when our kids are learning how to walk, they fall down and they hit their head. And we don't say, enough of that. I'm done. We're not going to teach you how to walk. Somebody bring in the wheelchair.
Yeah.
Because we
That's
know
such a
how
good,
it ends.
good example. Absolutely.
We get through that horrible period
That's
because
right.
we know how it ends. So I think what a gift to our children that we will push and change the rules, and they will have a little bit of anxiety, but what you're doing is giving them the gift of giving them tools to help themselves to know, oh, it's okay when you change the rules. And the longer you wait, the more anxiety you're going to have towards, the teenage years, and none of us want that.
That's right. And everyone is afraid of change.
Yes.
And so if you do small changes followed by extreme high rewards, that gradually shows the child, I can get through this. I can do this. It's a life lesson as well.
Yes. And even if you don't know if the child can understand it, I think it's good to language that that this is okay. I see all the time when talking to autism parents, I mean, let's face it, I am the queen of anxiety and I don't like change, and I'm like, I don't like the beginning or the end of anything. I like to be in the middle where it all makes sense, and because it's more comfortable then, right? So I get it. But whenever I'm talking to parents, especially around when the schedules change, everybody's high anxiety because they're getting a different therapist and they have the anxiety from it. And the thing that I always like to point out to parents is the therapist that you love, that you think you can only have now, do you remember the first time they came and you didn't know them? What if the next therapist who comes through the door is that times 2?
It's such a good point.
Right? And then they go, oh, gosh, I'd forgotten that there was a day that I didn't know them.
Yeah. How was your reaction when you first met, let's say, Peter or something?
Well, Peter Farrig was the first therapist that ever came to our door. Okay. And I had this very set idea of what I thought the therapists were going to look like. And Peter has been on the show before, but he's
a pretty big guy.
He reminds me of the genie in
Aladdin.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And at the time, he had the dreadlocks and a big gold, pirate thing in his ear. And I opened the door and I was like, they sent the genie from Aladdin. and he was, he was dressed nicely, but he was dressed casually and he had sneakers on, and he was like, and he was like, hey, and he came into our little condo and he was so loud.
Yes, he's
loud. And he
loud.
was constantly picking Jem up and throwing him up in the air because Jem loved that. And he'd be like, dude! And I would go, we're going to be evicted. He is so loud. But of course, within a week, we were like, what have we ever done without him? He was the genie,
It's so funny.
And the second therapist that ever came to the door was Ryan Bergstrom, and he came because it was before there was a dress code. He showed up in flip-flops and board shorts.
Oh my gosh.
And I literally opened the door. He looked like he was 12. He was 19 or 20, but he looked really young. I thought it was the paper boy.
Oh my God.
And I was expecting a therapist, and I opened the door. I said, it's your therapist. I opened the door and I said, oh, hi, thank you. No, we already get the LA Times.
You're kidding
No, and I
me.
went to close the door again, and he said, ma'am, I'm your therapist from the Center for Autism. And I was like, what?
My
They're
God.
sending children? And then he ended up being amazing. I mean, he changed our whole everything.
Yeah.
And really got me to buy in. Although Peter was our personal autism whisperer. But I remember maybe a year later, there was a person who came to observe who was a BCBA. And he came to the door and I thought, oh, you were what I was expecting. It was a guy in a suit.
That's
and he
so
had
funny.
And he had the man bag that was across his shoulder.
Sure.
And I was like, that's what I was expecting from a therapist. That was my
funny,
my mental image of not these people who got down on the floor and crawled around and took the cushions off the couch and made a burrito out of the cushions with my son, and you know,
Yeah.
that I hadn't thought it through, that they were going to be his playmates.
Yeah.
That they were going to crawl on my floor.
That's right.
And you know what? Can I just say thank God for them and thank God for you? I could just weep. When I think back to those days and how much anxiety I had, and I didn't know what I had, because you don't know what you don't know. But I'm so thankful every single day for everything that I got.
I know, it's so true.
It is so present in me every day that as you talk through all those lessons of conversation, and I watch my son have those all the time, and I can remember
how
a
he got
therapist who sat there and was teaching that thread. And now it's
incredible.
It's in his life, and it's so very his skill.
It's incredible. I hear you, and I thank you. You're one of the people that always reminds me of how amazing these therapists are, and I appreciate that. But it's true, you know, you never, it's such tiny little things that all come together. And
it coalesces.
And it's over the course of 3-4 years, so you never really get to see how each one will contribute to the next thing, the chain. But when it does, it's just magical. It's amazing.
The first day I took him to junior high, after we had fought, and they wanted to change everything, and they said, you know, kids with autism, our school said we don't believe in inclusion, and we don't put them in the general population, even if they've been in gen ed. And you told me not to do that, not to allow them, because you had prepared him. You said, no, Shannon, we prepared him. He's ready. He can go. And I trust you, but I also was terrified. And I went and watched him on the quad, and I saw all these things that he was doing. It was like watching skills unfold and come to life in my child. And I walked out. I thought I was going to have to be sedated, but I skipped out of the school, and I pulled out my phone and I started calling everybody that I had the phone number for that I still knew. And the phrase that I said to them was, keep doing what you're doing, because guess what? It works.
That's amazing.
It works. And, you know, so anyway, we're out of time.
You can't give me more goosebumps than I already have.
Oh, believe me, I can. But I just want to say, if you're watching this and you're on the fence, get your good quality ABA program if you have the ability to do it with card.
And tolerates the tough times, because there are going to be days when your child's crying a lot and it's tough.
And there are going to be days when your favorite therapist says, I'm going to Dubai for 2 years, and you know what? You survive all of that.
Yeah.
And your child gets better every day.
Absolutely.
And it all coalesces. It's just worth it. Let's say that. But I thank you for your time and for your talent and your energy and everything. And we're going to take a break. And when we come back, it's time for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy Allspaw Jackson will be joining me. We have Vince Redmond, licensed marriage and family therapist, joining us. And we also have Jonah and Ellen Zimiles from the Maplewood, New Jersey Word Bookstore. They've created a bookstore which hires individuals on the autism spectrum. We're just going to love this. So all that's coming up, plus in the news. Stick with us.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Hi, welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Lisa Ackerman. We're here doing allergy-free cooking, and I brought my sister with me today.
Jamie Davis, thanks for having me.
A lot of people are asking about an allergy-free breakfast, and breakfast can be full of crap.
But it's full of crap, and it's hard to do. We don't have time in the morning. We're in a hurry.
We're going completely nut-free. The recipe is not
personality. We can't do anything about.
Yeah, can't do anything about that. So we're going to start off first with. I'm using sorghum and brown rice flour. I find the texture good, and I've added some flaxseed meal. We talked about that last time, flaxseed meal for poop. Almost every one of our kids has a poop issue. What's next on the recipe is the quinoa flakes, baking powder, cinnamon, and the xanthan gum. It brings the glutinous texture back into the flour, and often what happens with these recipes is they can fall apart. This one holds up nicely. I like it. For the folks that are egg-free, we have a ton of egg replacers. One of those can be the arrowroot starch or bringing back some additional flaxseed. So there's a lot of options to go eggless, but we're going to go egg full in this one. For sweetener, I use the maple syrup. I stay away from refined sugar. What I'm adding now is the coconut milk, maple syrup, and a little bit of the coconut oil. And we're going to add in the raisins, craisins, and chocolate chips at the end. I find that chocolate chips can coax people to eat some really amazing things. When we started, Jeff had 42 food allergies, so we had to get creative in how we cooked. So nuts were a big, big issue. What I like now is that he can tolerate so many more things after start doing this diet. So let me show you how you can deal with this sticky stuff here. You get your fingers really wet, and you can push it down. So my oven has been preheated. It's at 350 degrees. So we're gonna just throw this in. Like I said, I like it around 23 minutes, and the magic oven says, I'm done. Looks like.
Don't you love magic ovens? They're awesome.
There we go, pops right out. The texture of these, and it's so pretty. It looks almost like a big chocolate chip cookie, but you actually made it healthy. But you can be my guinea pig. Tell me what you think.
That looks really good.
Doesn't it? So the textures and the colors in there are just beautiful. So the raisins are for you, the chocolate chips are for your kid.
I can't believe it's gluten-free.
I know, right? It doesn't taste like, you know, crap. We're wrapping up another cooking show. If you have feedback, you can email us at autismlive@gmail.com. We're, of course, on Facebook. You could go to facebook.com/autismlive. And of course, Talkin' Now has thousands of recipes. Join me there, and we can cook some more later on. So thanks for joining us.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
What is autism?
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 I've been asking myself that for a very, very long time.
Let me think about that one.
Trying to, just,
Jeez. Let me think. Oh man, that's a rough one. Yes.
Autism,
Autism is a neurological disorder that affects many of our kids in different ways.
It's a learning disability that affects the cognitive functions of the brain.
A lot of people have the misconception that it's a disability, and it's really not.
I look at it as like a special gift.
When one person thinks differently from another.
It's an opportunity for everyone to learn to understand someone that's a little different than them. Autism is the ability to educate.
They're given so much talent in different areas.
To me, autism means a chance to be with and be around people you really care about. Autism is beautiful.
It's a way of seeing the world differently.
It's always unique, totally intelligent, and sometimes mysterious.
Happiness that comes out of my son's hard work.
It's a movement.
Unpredictable.
That's right.
Awesome. Love.
The field I want to work in.
Laughter, fun, joy. Autism is beautiful to me.
I want you to remember these three words. There is hope.
Good morning and welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Nancy Oswald Jackson.
And I'm Shannon Penrod. And
yeah,
we've both had quite a week, but we have all this stuff to cover. And I want to say we're having Vince Redmond on in a little while. And then we've got two guests, Jonah and Ellen Zimmerles from the Maplewood, New Jersey bookstore, which is seeking to hire individuals who are on the spectrum. So that's all coming up. And we've got a bunch in the news. But as always, I don't get to see Nancy very much anymore.
So we catch up when I come in.
And it's always this, what's going on. Right. And you've had a lot of stuff going on, and you said you're willing to talk about it.
I've been going through a difficult time. Wyatt had a seizure a week ago Saturday, and he had one 6 months earlier, and we had gone to have him checked out, and they said there was no seizure activity at that time in the MRI, and so they didn't put him on meds, but now this is the second one, and it was pretty severe. He was stopped breathing, lost consciousness, turned blue. And I've been trying to navigate where to take him, what the next steps are, what tests, what doctor will treat him, who can get him in. And it's
overwhelming.
It's totally overwhelming. I mean,
and there's an element of fear to it. We were just talking about that it's like, when is he going to have another one, and will he be okay? And the whole concept of feeling like he is safe is rattled for you right now.
Exactly.
And I don't think you're the only person watching. We've got people watching that I'm sure have been down this path, and I think it's important, because we were just talking about anxiety and fear and all those things. I think it's important to acknowledge when something is real and say, my anxiety is appropriate.
Right.
And then to take action to make sure that you're doing everything that you can, but acknowledging the things you can't be in control of.
Exactly.
So, and you're doing all of that.
I'm waiting. That's why I've got my phone here in case
and
they
if she
call
gets
from
the
Children's
call,
Hospital.
We'll go to a commercial, because I think you guys get it better than anybody else does.
I'm sure there are lots of parents out there whose children have seizure disorder, and they understand this.
Yes, and the way our healthcare moves at a pace of, it can be dizzying how slow things can move.
And there are lots of
sometimes.
tests involved with this. It's not just one visit.
Right. And, for people who don't know and haven't dealt with seizures, when a child has the first seizure, they'll look at it exactly as you said to see if there's more stuff going on. But a lot of times when somebody has one seizure, they go, it's one seizure.
That's what they did.
Right? But then when you have a second seizure, then everything changes and they go, okay, because it's just like autism. It's if you have one seizure, you do not have a seizure disorder. When you have two, they assume that you do and will proceed as if you do. So, and especially the fact that he had a seizure where he lost consciousness and wasn't breathing.
Right.
That's a really, if I were you, I would be filled with anxiety about that too. But I applaud you, Nancy, that she's not just sticking her head underneath the covers, right? Because I'm sure you would like to.
Yes.
Right? But she's not. She's taken steps, saw one doctor, then found out that she should see a different doctor, is taking steps and is waiting for the phone call. You're in the hard part.
Okay.
You're taking the action and you haven't seen the benefit of it yet.
Right.
Your fears have not been allayed yet, but
they haven't.
But you're doing the right thing. You're taking the action.
Yeah. Okay.
So you're awesome sauce.
All right.
Well, I think sometimes it feels upside down, right?
The whole world feels, and of course I don't have a spouse to help me with this.
Yes. Which makes it like extra tough, because
makes
you're
it
carrying
really
the whole
tough.
thing.
I have
All
no
the decisions are on you.
husband to help me with these decisions. So.
Yes, but you know that you have friends that you can bounce things off. Whatever, it's not the same.
Right.
It won't ever be the same. But I know for a fact that we have all of us collectively, all of you watching and us at the table here, have felt like we were alone at some point in this journey. And I always go back to the fact that that's what it feels like. And I love the thing that says fear is false evidence appearing real. And I had the dream many years ago that I was standing there. There was this crazy dream. I was standing there and this car pulled into a parking garage and it started tumbling, and it was a convertible, and there was this woman with this big jacket, and as she tumbled out of the car and her jacket would roll, a baby would fall out every time she would roll, and there would be somebody in the parking garage who would pick the baby up and save it, and she would continue rolling, and babies kept falling out, and she rolled all the way through the parking garage until the end when she got to me, and I caught her in my arms and stopped her, and she looked at me, and it was me. And because your dreams are always crazy, she looked at me and she said, "Oh my gosh, did you just see what happened to me? Did you just see what I went through?" And I said to her, "Did you see how many people's arms you were in?" And she was like, "No, I didn't see that." And for me, that was a metaphor for the fact that I felt going through autism, that it was this thing that a lot of times that I was going through alone.
Right.
But when I look back on it now, I see that I was in your arms, and I see that I was in our therapist's arms, and of course I was in my husband's arms. Sometimes I didn't feel that way because it felt like it was me deciding. So I'm telling you, I know it feels like you're alone, but you're in a lot of people's arms right now. All the people watching, you're in there. There are people saying prayers for you and your kid that you don't know in corners of this world. You are in people's arms, and maybe you don't feel it yet, but it's there. I just want you to know that.
Okay.
And for those of you watching, same thing. You know, how many times are you sitting someplace and thinking about the people that we don't know that are going through this? I know you think about that. And you know, that even if we don't know you, there are times that I say a prayer for, you know, just any mom that is feeling alone right now. Right? And there are times when I'm in a meeting and we're trying to figure out what to do, and I'm like, no, we have to think about the mom who doesn't have access to this. How are we going to do that? And, you know, people that you don't know are thinking about you always, about all of us. So you're in our arms, babe.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Should we do news really quickly?
Yes.
Okay.
This first one, a blood test for autism.
Yeah.
But they're saying not so fast because it's not, even if validated, could not be used to screen for autism in the general population.
Yeah.
Because it has to do with genetic, the proportion of amino acids.
The thing about it is that, you know, you're going to see in the news all over the place, oh, blood tests for autism, and everybody's going to feel like they can rush out and get it. But really what they have found is that if you just give it to everyone, it's not effective at determining. When it is shown to be effective is when you have people that are high risk for autism because they already have a sibling that's on the spectrum.
Right.
So I just know that when mainstream media gets a hold of this, we're going to get a bunch of
blood test for
trash
autism, right?
news.
It'll be like a headline,
right? And then,
but it says the test accuracy would be less than 8% for the general population.
Yes. So not useful in terms of that. That'll give false flags. You know, that concerns me too, because, you know, I don't know about false flags.
Right.
Everybody says, oh, we've diagnosed all these kids that don't have autism, when I think it's far more often the other way around.
And this is in spectrumnews.org if you're interested.
Yeah, and then there was an article that I thought was really interesting. Everybody knows who Sacha Baron Cohen is, and Sacha Baron Cohen has been all over the news lately and is being sued 68 days from Sunday. But what you may not know is that he has a cousin.
Is that his cousin?
That is his
I had
cousin.
no idea that
his
Simon
cousin.
Baron Cohen
Simon
was his
Baron
cousin.
Cohen is his cousin, and he is one of the leading researchers
in the
world of autism. And he's really the one who, the whole Sally Ann test for perspective taking is Simon Baron Cohen's.
Okay.
I mean, he's very respected.
Yes, he is, very much
so. So he has an article that's out right now, and the title of it is Genetic Studies Intend to Help People with Autism Not Wipe Them Out. I think it's a really good read, and I'm not seeing
it's really something that you need to go and take a look at. Let's see.
But I'm not seeing what the source is.
It's newscientist.com.
Okay, thank you.
Newscientist.com, and he talks about how the fear of using genetic studies could cause eugenics.
Exactly.
Which is, you know, that if a parent found out they had a child that was likely to have autism, they would terminate the pregnancy.
Exactly.
And that this has been done a lot with Down syndrome and all of the, you know, ethical questions that raises.
And we see in our self-advocates in the community that they have grave concerns about when you're trying to do genetic studies, what will it mean? I understand completely their fears, and I think that Simon Baron Cohen does too, and that's what this article is about. I know that you have fears about this. I know you have ethical concerns about this, but as one of the leading researchers, I want you to know what my intentions are and what good can come from this, and that you're cutting yourself off, you know, from things that really could benefit your community and create more funding and create more awareness. And I'm not looking to wipe you out.
Yes.
I just thought it was
it could
really
give a heads
really
up for
good read.
Early intervention.
Absolutely.
So that's one of the main reasons.
Absolutely. But it really could mean a great deal in terms of funding as well.
Yes, it could.
Which our self-advocates are always saying, where is the funding for adults? And so he's making the case here saying, here's what you should know. I want to give you the facts and let you know where I'm coming from as one of the leading researchers. So I think I just wanted to bring it up. And it's a fun thing that he is the cousin of Sacha Baron Cohen. Kind of a odd little combo platter. And then I thought this was particularly interesting.
I didn't see the article on this. I just saw the
Did
headline.
she not include?
No, I didn't get my article, so you're going to have to cover this one for me.
All right, that's fine. But you and I have had this conversation before about, and I was just talking to somebody about this the other day, that when your husband Reed was in his end days, he was in a memory care place where you were there all the time, and I came from time to time, and we really were spending time with people in the facility and seeing what memory care is like. And you were the first one to say to me, you were like, have you noticed that it's like looking at the other end of the spectrum.
Right.
These adults are reverting to like an adult form of autism.
Right.
That there were similarities.
Very, very big similarities.
And I don't hear other people talking about that, Nancy.
I actually talked to RFK Jr. about that.
Did you?
Yes, and he said that there is some research backing that up.
Okay, interesting. But so there's a new theory, what we're talking about, that there is a germ that is causing Alzheimer's, and that along with this, that there are a biomarker that they're finding genetically that could see that someone is predisposed to, if they're exposed to this germ, that then they would be more likely to have autism. So I just thought that this was interesting because we've had lots of people talking about autism as an autoimmune response.
Right.
That the brain has, and where is that coming from? Why does that we see in the brains of individuals who are on the spectrum that the brains are typical, and that then something happens at some point and the brain changes, it almost speeds up. And the brain develops way too fast to allow to make all the connections that it would make in the neurotypical brain. That it will put emphasis in some areas of the brain as opposed to others, which is why you have somebody like Temple Grandin who has that visual cortex that is so much bigger than a normal person's, right? But people have been saying for a while, we think there's an autoimmune response, but what is it in reaction to? And now they're postulating the idea that it could be a germ, and that germ could also be causing Alzheimer's. It's just a fascinating little thing.
Okay, where's that article from?
We're not seeing it. MedPage.
MedPage
today.
MedPageToday.com.
There we go. All right, we've got to take a break so that we can come back and talk to Vince Redmond, licensed marriage and family therapist who used to be a behavioral, therapist. So he knows this thing inside and out, and he's going to be talking with us, so stick with us.
Okay. Hi, I'm Yvonne Johansson, and this is My Little House.
My Little House is an interactive, multi-sensory educational felt toy that I invented to help develop children's language skills.
I love My Little House.
I've been working as a speech therapist for over 20 years. I have spent my entire career working with young children. I work with children with language delays, and I have many children with significant cognitive disabilities and children on the autism spectrum. It has been a constant challenge finding toys that are fun, educational, and actually engage my students. In every preschool since I've been a young therapist, we carry on these felt boards. Kids love them because they're soft and they're fluffy, and there's usually these little pieces that attach to these boards because felt sticks onto felt. You bring them into the activity because they're putting a piece on the board. So it's almost kind of like magic. So then I just thought, wouldn't it be great if I could just take this one-dimensional board and make it into an actual three-dimensional toy? How cool would that be?
That's the idea behind My Little House. You can spread it out flat like a 4-panel felt board, or here's the cool part. In the blink of an eye, My Little House easily converts into a 3-dimensional reversible house.
This is the outside. This is the inside.
My Little House comes with 36 felt cutout pieces that match outlines in 8 colorful rooms. And they're felt, so they stick. Each piece inside My Little House has been placed with purpose.
For instance, in the kitchen, whole, half, under, on top, inside, big, bigger, and biggest, empty and full, circle, triangle, inside, outside.
Really cool thing, I have a nonprofit, Lecotech. They are the folks that put out the Differently Abled Guide for Toys R Us. They've been doing it for 25 years. They gave me their seal of approval as a toy that they feel is a toy with purpose, and that will make a difference. But My Little House isn't just for kids on the spectrum or with significant disorders. It's also for typically developing 2 to 5-year-olds. It's a fun toy.
Oh, this is so soft. That piece goes.
Recently, I took My Little House to the American Speech and Hearing Association convention in Philadelphia, and the response from my peers was overwhelming. Hundreds of therapists, teachers, and heads of school districts wanted to order them.
It was real validation for me that this truly is a toy that needs to get out there.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod. I'm a proud autism mom, I'm a former educator, and I am the host of Autism Live. And as all three of those things, I want to recommend to you My Little House. This is one of the smartest toys I have ever seen for teaching language to kids who have emerging language. Whether they're on the autism spectrum or completely neurotypical, it's a great, fun, reinforcing toy, but it's especially great for our kids that are on the autism spectrum because it makes learning fun and it makes it tactile. They have these felt shapes and they get to match them up. And I'm telling you, even the adults love to play with this. We loved this toy so much that we wanted to be able to bring it to you at a great discount. So right now, if you will go to www.smartfelttoys, and when you get to the coupon code, put in a-live.com, you'll get $5 off. Isn't that great? So I want to encourage you, go and get My Little House for all the kiddos in your life.
And we are back, and I don't know whether we have Vince or not.
We think we have Vince. Let's see.
Vince, are you there?
Hello.
I'm not.
Doesn't sound like it.
Well, there he is. There's Mr.
Hi,
Vince.
how are you? Can you hear us?
He's frozen.
I can't hear.
We have a frozen Vince.
We have a frozen Vince. And not the most complimentary frozen Vince. Vince is a handsome man. That did not do him justice. Okay, we're going to see if we can get Vince, but while we're doing that, you guys have written in some questions, in particular on YouTube. Well, there's one on Facebook. So on Facebook, Jacqueline says, my son is 8.5 years old. How do you get the child to go with you to the store? And this is a story that I tell all the time, that when Jem was little, I would try to take him to the store, and I love shopping.
I hate shopping.
And there's a lot of people who hate shopping, and I grew to hate shopping because Jem did not love going to the store.
Not many kids on the spectrum do.
Right. Well, and I don't even know that many kids that particularly love going to the store. And but we would get ginormous tantrums in the store. And so I would try to run in, get what I could. A lot of times I would get hit in the head.
Right.
And it was just a horrible, horrible time in the grocery store. Card stepped in, and because they made me make a list of what are the issues that you're having and what do you need help with. And one of the things I said was, I need help with shopping. And so they set up a whole program, and the first time they took us to the store, I just got to shop. I didn't have to do anything. They dealt with Jem. They taught him how to hold his little hand on the shopping cart. They prompted him, and he was a runner. So he would try to run away from me and go to something else, go out the store. So they set up rules for him. They reinforced him. They did all the good ABA stuff, and they sort of set it up. Right? Which I was never good at. Then the next time they came back, we went back to the grocery store, and they said, okay, now this time you're going to shop, and you're going to be in charge of him, and we're only going to talk to you. We're not going to talk to him. And they would say things to me like, now give him, a 5-second warning that we're going to leave the cereal aisle in 5 seconds. And it made it so that I could go to the store with him, and I still love going to the store with him. And they made sure that there were things that reinforced him. They had, at one point we had a sticker chart where if he didn't do certain behaviors, he got whatever he wanted at the checkout.
Right.
And then we flipped it, and he had to, he had to earn things by doing other behaviors,
Right.
being
The
helpful.
checkout is always a big issue because that's where they have all that candy.
It's deliberate.
And it's terrible. That's where I had my problems. So
Right.
I had to prep in advance what Wyatt could get.
Yes.
Other than the things at the checkout, or what things he could get at the checkout.
And a lot of
they were
times
allowed.
there's a discussion in the parking lot about when we go in, here's what we're going to do, and having the visual schedule, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and if you do X, Y, and Z, you will get this.
Right.
And in the beginning, by the way, we didn't do that. At the end, it was if you do this, this, and this halfway through the store, you will get this treat. It has to be reinforcing for them. You have to institute rules. You have to follow through on them, and that has to be reinforcing for them. But I know I'm at stores now all the time with Jem, and he's great. He's like the best person to take to the store. But you go to the store with Wyatt all the time.
I go to the store with Wyatt. He goes to the grocery store, and he's fine.
Lovely.
Yeah, if he has a list of things to look for, he helps me. He wants to push the cart. He doesn't want me to push the cart.
Yeah.
Sometimes at the checkout, we still have a little issue of him wanting something, but I try to deal with that beforehand. But yeah, we give him things to do.
Okay, we're hearing that Vince
we
is
have
ready.
Vince.
We can have
get
Vince
to
weigh
him.
in
Yeah,
on this
because
too.
we don't know how long
Vince,
we have him.
We're thrilled to have you. And for those of you who didn't know, Vince Redmond, licensed marriage and family therapist, but somebody who worked as a behavioral therapist for many, many years, is actually featured in the video Recovered. Vince, we're so thrilled and lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you. So what's the topic? What were we just talking about?
Well, we talked, Wyatt had a seizure, his second seizure. And now we're investigating whether he has seizure disorder. I'm dealing with trying to get him into specialists, testing, all of that. And obviously my anxiety is, well, it's through the roof.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's on the ceiling.
And, we've talked about parental anxiety before and what you can do, but also it brought up the topic of, this is the second time he's had to go to the hospital for a seizure, how to language that to your kids so they understand what's going on and aren't completely petrified themselves of the situation.
Right. Well, first off, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry to hear that,
Thank you.
He had another seizure. I know it's been a long time since he had one. So
he had one
that's
6
scary.
months ago, and that was the only one he'd ever had. And now he's had another one that was a grand mal seizure. And now it looks like once you've got two, you've got to take this more seriously and investigate medications and that kind of thing.
Right. And like you said, that's scary for everyone. I mean, everyone's anxieties are now heightened. And I think, for first thing is controlling our own anxiety, right? Making sure that we get the answers that we need from the doctors and talking with them. But as for Wyatt, he doesn't know what's going on, right? This is just something that happens to him. And we, without getting into all the medical jargon and so forth, we need to just let him know that, something in his brain is short-circuiting and it's kind of turning him off for a little bit, and the doctors are going to help us keep you on, right? So that we can put it maybe more in terms that he would understand, but feel a little bit more confident and comfortable that mom is working with the doctors. We feel good about it. We're going to be able to take care of this. The other thing is making sure he feels that he did nothing wrong, right? There was nothing that he did that made him feel this way, or that
he actually said to me, "I'm sorry I had a seizure," after it was over. So that's something that's important to know.
See, exactly, and that's what I was thinking, is that a lot of times our kids will feel bad that they see the anguish in mom's face when they come to, they see all the people and hospitals and emergency rooms and all this, and they feel that they're responsible for these things, and these are things that obviously they don't have anything to do with the result of it. So first thing we want to do is ease that anxiety, ease the anxiety of there's nothing wrong, you're okay, we're gonna take care of you. This was something that just happened, so that it brings that anxiety down for them, and they're a little bit more receptive then at that point to actually learn maybe a little bit more of what happened, so that if you're seeing a doctor or you're getting a consult, they don't have any guilt, they don't have any sense of anxiety that they're going to go to the doctor and the doctor is going to say that they did something wrong, that they are going to get in trouble in a way. I know sometimes this doesn't seem rational for us, but if we put ourselves in his shoes, he when he sees anguish, he sees upset, he sees a lot of stress in people's minds or in their faces and their bodies when he comes to, he immediately thinks that he did something wrong.
Right, right. So that's important to know. Yeah.
Okay, we had a question that came in from a viewer that we've had a lot of people asking this, and it really comes hand in hand with some anxiety with parents. In this particular question, she says, I have a 9-year-old with autism and intellectual disability, some speech, but lacking full communication skills. She says, would it be wise to take her out of school at this point and put her in a 40-hour intensive ABA program? She's tested at a mental age of 2 to 4 years old, but she will be 9 years old this month. And we have a lot of parents that are asking this question. They've heard that you can take somebody out from medical necessity, but I know that for parents, they get a lot of pushback from the school on this, Vince. And I wondered if you could address that a little bit about, how to prioritize whether you should do this or not.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, I think we have a lot of families that come to us with the same type of question. I think the first thing comes to assessments, right? Is doing all the formal assessments as well as, an assessment for applied behavior analysis, ABA therapy, to really see if this is the right modality for them that would help their child learn, right? With intellectual disabilities and autism, each kid learns in different ways. It could be with more visuals, more audio, more, sometimes it could be more selective learning. So what we want to do is do a full analysis, full, assessment, looking at all, IEP goals, looking at the assessments they've done in school, see what learning processes have been successful with them at school, and then again, assessing them for the appropriateness of ABA, so that we can then present a full comprehensive report to see if, in fact, we believe that prioritizing ABA and more one-to-one learning would be more effective than school learning.
Wonderful. Because I know that's a really tough decision to make about, and schools will, try to tell you that your child has to be in school. But there are laws that say if your child has something that's medical necessity, that you can pull them out. We had another question, and I don't know if you want to take it, Vince. It's pretty intense. How can you help a child with autism to talk? That's a big question.
How do you help a child with autism to talk? And again, it's a very broad question. The way we do it is we break it down into individual skills, right? We break it down into little individual steps, either it be first just doing enunciations of sounds, and then echoics of words, and then, repeating, multiple word sentences, teaching them how to request things or demand for things, right? We withhold something that they might want until we can get some type of an approximations, and then they get access, right? We make that connection that you use language to get things that are desired and preferred, right? If it's labeling things or tacting things, right? We take preferred items and have them, again, do echoics and try to get them to just imitate what the word would be. So it'd be milk or cat or, toy or anything that they're interested in. And we build those individual steps into longer utterances, longer sentences that are a little bit more meaningful. When we get a good base of that, then we look at what's called intraverbals, which is your social communication, your abilities to then communicate socially with others and saying hi and other pleasantries, byes, thank yous, getting them to being able to ask questions of another and so forth. So it really starts very small, very basic, and very repetitive, and can continue to grow out the child's life so that it becomes more abstract, complex, especially when you're getting into those, interverbals and social interactions. So I think a lot of our kids, hundreds and hundreds and even thousands of our kids that come to us don't have any language when they start. They don't have language, and they of course don't have speech. And we're able to, using ABA and using verbal behavior methods, we're able to break down their needs and teach them the individual steps that are necessary to be able to either vocally speak language or to be able to have speech through augmented communication devices and things of that nature.
And I want to say too, I know it's a plug, but because I love it, skills. Skills for Autism, and the number is 877-975-4559 if you're a person who prefers to call. That's all those things that Vince just talked about, the lessons, the curriculum for that is in skillsforautism.com.
Okay,
And you can get them there. And it's relatively inexpensive to get it. It's a monthly subscription, but if it isn't something that you can afford, you can apply for a grant from Autism Care and Treatment Today. Starting on October 1st, you're having an open grant phase, and they can, and I know that's one of the grants that you guys love to give because for you guys it's inexpensive.
And it's something we can make.
There you go. So I want to put that out there. Vince, we love you. We're out of time, which I hate because there are so many things that we could talk about. But thank you so much for being with us and for being such a light. For people who don't know, you're the director of Card Family Services and offer a whole host of services to be able to help support families. How can people get a hold of you?
They can reach me at my email address, v.redmond, REDMOND, at centerforautism.com.
We adore you, Vince.
Thank you,
so much for being with us. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay.
All right, we're going to take a break.
We've got great guests coming up that started a bookstore called Words, in parentheses. And
I thought it was called the Maplewood, New Jersey store, but so that's where I'm confused.
Words Bookstore, Words.
But it's in Maplewood, New Jersey.
Well, I think they're opening
I subscribed
a
to the Facebook group, and there was Maplewood in it, but I'm confused.
It's called Words, for
I'm
sure.
completely out in left field.
It's called Words, and they're opening up a second one now, is my understanding.
Okay.
So we'll find out. Yeah, they're in Livingston.
Okay.
Words will be opening a second branch in Lifetown in Livingston within the next few months. So we're going to talk to and I'm going to butcher their name, the Zimales. We'll find out when we get back.
When they're here. Stick with us.
Nobody ever asks a kid with autism, what is it you'd really like to do? At this school, we ask the kids, what is your goal? What is your dream? Exceptional Minds is a vocational training program for young adults on the autism spectrum who want to have careers in computer animation and visual effects. I think young people with autism are totally underestimated.
When you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. They all have different talents, different skills, and what surprised me is that there really are no limits, that if these guys believe that they can do something, they really can.
It's estimated that 90 to 95% of young adults with autism are unemployed or underemployed.
A lot of young adults still live at home. A lot of them suffer from depression and are very isolated from the rest of the world, and the opportunities for them are very limited.
We want to develop careers for our young adults. Our full-time program runs 3 years, at the end of which we have job placement and job coaching. We have a work readiness program. We also have our own in-house studio so that when our students graduate, they can do on-the-job training and work on real projects.
We outsourced about 30-40 shots to the team here. They did fantastic work that we can put into a movie and be proud of it. It's great. I mean, we want to do it again.
The studio is their first step into the professional world, the first step in their new careers as digital artists.
The whole purpose is to get the students out into the real world.
We all have the same dreams. We want significance, dignity, and purpose with our lives. We have an opportunity to give those 3 words to every single student at this school who will actually be able to go out and participate in the dream.
This is my first full-time, full-paying job. I primarily work in After Effects. I learned After Effects at Exceptional Minds. It seemed like a good place for me to fit in because I was interested in animation.
Right from the first day that Nicky set foot in our company, he was producing work for us. We saw what level of professionalism is being instilled in them from the very beginning.
This was the first opportunity where Nicky could combine something he loved to do with something he was really, really good at that could eventually lead to employment.
When we first met Kevin, he was working at a supermarket bagging groceries, and they said he would never amount to anything else.
I work at Stargate Studios, and I'm a junior compositor. I mainly do like rotoscoping right now, and I'm still learning.
I think that you find great talent in the most amazing places. The students at Exceptional Minds have had a fair amount of training to get them ready for the visual effects environment.
If it wasn't for Exceptional Minds, I might still be at the supermarket, and I might be living at my parents' house.
Everything's changed. Nikki has purpose.
It feels like I'm a member of society now.
He's capable of making it on his own.
Once you get inside, you see what's really happening there, you immediately want to be a part of it.
It's the dream factory, you know, the movie business, and if you can connect people with their dreams, then the magic happens.
At Exceptional Minds, we like to say that we are changing lives one frame at a time.
And we are back, as promised, with our guests, Jonah and Ellen Zimiles, who are coming to us from, are you coming to us from Maplewood, New Jersey?
Today, actually, New York City, but in general, we're in Maplewood.
Okay, in general, you're in Maplewood. And in 2009, you opened the Words bookstore. That's Words spelled, you see it on the screen there. And it's helped over 100 individuals with autism work in its vocational training program. What, first of all, you have amazing backgrounds. Ellen, you're Managing Director in Financial Services Advisory and Compliance, Segment Leader at Navigant, what a mouthful that is, a global consulting firm where you specialize in financial crime investigation and compliance. You've been, you were an Assistant United States Attorney in the Southern District of New York for more than 10 years. You were a partner in a Big Four accounting firm. Jonah, you have a very impressive background. You practiced law for over a dozen years before spending 6 years as a stay-at-home dad after your son Daniel was diagnosed with autism. And you went on back to school at age 50 and received an MBA from Columbia University's Graduate School of Business. Whew, and if it's so that's not enough, you're both co-chairs of the Night of Too Many Stars, and you've been presented with the Maplewood Chamber of Commerce Distinguished Service Award. So lots of amazing things in your background.
Boy, you guys are slouches.
You're making me feel like a slouch,
right?
That's for sure.
Wow. And then on top of that, this amazing bookstore. We want to know what motivated you to open Words.
Well, it was Ellen's idea, so I'll let her tell the story.
So Jonah and I wanted to have some sort of vocational program. You know, people with autism are adults much longer than their children. And we wanted to make sure that not only our son, but others would have, you know, a meaningful life, a meaningful and productive adult life. And so we were trying to figure out what was the best way to do that, how could we do that. And even in my firm, you know, we had hired a few people with autism, but not on a large scale. And we tried to figure out how we could do this in our town, Maplewood, New Jersey, which is a lovely town and very heterogeneous, very, you know, sort of very yummy. And we saw that there was a bookstore. It was a small bookstore on the side street that was, you know, that was going out of business and wanted to sell to a local, you know, business owner.
And that was in September.
Labor Day. That was Labor Day
2008, right when our son was about 12 then.
Right. And so I came home and said, Jonah, what do you think if we buy the bookstore and we turn that into a vocational program, you know, in a real business, and we do this as a real business? And he said, I don't know what you're talking about. You know, I've never run a bookstore, never done anything.
Or any kind of retail.
Or any kind of retail, right, since I think he was a bag boy at a supermarket. But it was, if you remember, 2008 was sort of a tough time. And there were some big storefronts empty, and Maplewood was hurting a bit. So within 24 hours, Jonah came back to me and said,
sure, whatever you say, dear. But I had suggested that instead of being on the side street in a small space, which first of all I thought would be very crowded and very difficult for particularly kids with autism to move around. It was always kind of hard to bring our son into the bookstore. Right. plus we wanted to help the town out, and so we thought that if we moved to a really big space, the largest storefront in the middle of town, that would both help help the community more and also be a better spot for our for workers as well as kids who are visiting the bookstore.
So that was the start of it, and so we so September is when we started had the idea. By November we had the deal with the owner, and we spent then those last 2 months in that space, in the smaller space, learning a little bit about what it's like to go through the holiday season in a bookstore, which is quite a time to learn it. And then by January 20th, 2009, it was Inauguration Day, we opened up Words on the main street, the bigger space on the main street.
Wow.
And how did you go about recruiting young people with autism and getting them involved? Tell us about your program for them.
Yeah, so, well, the first thing I quickly learned was not only, I knew that I didn't know much about the book industry or about retail, but I also learned that while I felt very comfortable with people with autism because of my son and his friends and classmates and people who I worked with, that I didn't know that much about vocational training. And we quickly received offers from schools to bring people in to do job sampling and things like that, and that served as a good model. One of the things we had been hoping to work on, and we've done some work with, is when people in New Jersey, and I think in many states, special needs kids can go to school through age 21, but then they, transition out, and it's often called falling off the cliff. And we were hoping to help provide transition services, which we've been able to do some as well. So we do both kids in high school, or ages 18 through 21, and then also some young people with 21, and now we've expanded to some adults as well.
And we also wanted to make the store a place that anybody could really go to, and that people with special needs would feel very comfortable in. And so we trained our staff about people with special needs, because not the whole staff had necessarily had exposure to that, and didn't know how to, what they should expect or how to behave. And so we did a training with them. There was an organization that came in to train them, and that was very helpful. So people could freely sort of ask questions, but know that this is sort of a safe space, and that people come in and they make noise or they do something. That's okay. This is a place where they are accepted and welcomed, and families can bring the entire family there.
Yeah, I'd love to chime in on that for a second if I could, because I think it's just so important that, and fortunately, the situation seems much better today than it was a decade ago, but there were a lot of families of people with autism who were reluctant to bring their kids out into the community and felt very awkward and uncomfortable. I remember when our son was small, going to stores and feeling very uncomfortable about it, and we thought that it could be very helpful to those families to know there was always a place to go, and in fact also to model for other businesses in the community that it was fine to have families with autism visiting, and we quickly got our name known, and we had plenty of kids with autism in visiting, and it's always a tremendous pleasure when that happens.
And then Jonah did something else which I thought was really terrific. He created a program called Second Sundays, which is the second Sunday of every month, and we bring in people, all different kinds of people, whether it's someone cooking or sewing or theater or dance or karate, to sort of expose people with autism to those different events. Oh, there, you've got some. Okay.
Yeah, a free one, right.
Right, and so it's free. Anyone came in, we started out with different sort of sets, but that's our son up there in the white karate outfit.
Okay.
But we wanted to expose them to different kinds of things. You never know what someone's going to like unless they get exposed to it. So I remember we had someone who did sewing. It was more like a needlepoint,
and a picture of it, yeah.
Yes, right, needlepoint with sort of, on burlap with large sort of, a big needle and large wool, and he loved it. And I was very surprised. I had no idea he would like it that much, or that his fine motor coordination would be really appropriate for it, and it was great for him. So you never know until you expose people. So that was sort of another thing that Jonah actually created that was very impressive.
It's amazing what you guys, I mean, it's a gift to your community in so many different ways that you guys have created this, but this isn't the first time that you've made forays. Talk a little bit about the other ways that you are involved in the autism community.
So maybe you can talk about your employment thing.
Right.
And
Yeah, so again, it is putting your money where your mouth is here. So when I had started a company, again, 2006, I guess is when we started this, and I felt like, look, if I'm running this company, I'm going to have some people with autism who work here. And so once we get started, not very far into it, I think I started in June 2006. By January 2007, we had our first employee who was with me still today. And we looked around and we went to an organization that, that sort of trained people. And we interviewed 3 different people. And we picked actually the one that was most challenged, because the other 2 were fine. One had a job, the other one, it was barely perceptible that she had any issues. And we said, it's really not that much of a, challenge or that much of a big deal to hire other people. We wanted to hire the more challenging person. And we did, and when we told the agency that we were hiring that one that was most challenged, they said, what are you, who, which one? And we told them, and we explained why, and it was terrific. And you would not have known this, because during the interview, she was very, not particularly communicative. She talked, and she in response to questions, but not particularly, involved. And when she was told that she got the job, the people at the agency said she screamed up and down. She was so happy and so excited that she actually got this job, that you don't really know what's going on inside somebody. And
we're gonna ask you to pause for just 1 second. Nancy's gonna step out to take a call. I'm gonna continue on. We've been waiting for a phone call from a doctor, and we're gonna ask our viewers, beg their pardon, while Nancy, we're not even gonna go to break. We're gonna have her step in front of the camera. So that we can keep you guys here, because when a doctor calls, you got to do what you got to do.
In fact, I wanted to comment on that if I could. We do about 100 author events a year at our bookstore. And traditionally at these events, and particularly, in bookstore events, something like that, people are often say, everyone silence your phones and turn your phones off. And in fact, I get up in front of the room sometimes and make an announcement that everyone should keep their phones on, because I'm used to our community, and we get these emergency phone calls from doctors or teachers or schools or caregivers, and they're really more important than the minor inconvenience of having interruption. So we certainly appreciate and understand that.
Right. Well, you guys are awesome. Thank you Nancy has stepped out now. And so I wanted to talk just briefly about, you were saying about the things that you do in the autism community, and how you had this person, you gave them the job that had some significant challenges, and how excited they were. I want to know what happened.
So she's working for me still today. This was in January of 2007, and she still works with us.
And you had a second person.
And then we had a second person, right, who we hired, and then we did this who's still here. So he started the following January. We brought this to the Chicago office, to the Washington office, and to our London office, and it's been a great success, and people behave better in front of them. Everyone is very thoughtful in front of them and wants to be their best, wants to be the best person they can be. So they do a fine job. They do a very good job in what they do and what we need them to do. They've expanded some of what they do. We taught the first person how to bind documents and to do, different things. The other person actually can take the subway and make deliveries and set up computers and do different things. He also happens to be the top Avon salesman in his, area.
Oh, wow.
And he was, the captain of our softball team, did lots of different things, so that the two of them are really great here. We have had several people with special needs who work here, and it is always a plus for the work that they do, which is not charity work. It is real, true work that's needed, plus the impact they have on the other employees. That's really very special and meaningful, and raises everybody up. So we're big supporters of hiring people with special needs.
And in addition to the bookstore, I serve on several autism boards, but two in particular. One is a place called Spectrum 360, which is a special needs school with about 250 students. And we've got about 100 people in the day program right now. And then also something called the Friendship Circle that you may have out in LA
yes,
chapter as well. And we're opening a 53,000 square foot special needs center called Lifetown that should be open any day now, and we're opening up our second branch of our bookstore there. But when you hear about Lifetown, that's going to be something really to check out. I expect to be a national news story. The National Football League and New York Jets have donated a professional football field there that we're going to be having special needs leagues, sports leagues, and their bowling alley and swimming and all kinds of stores and activities.
So it's like inside of it is a world where you have a bookstore, you'll have a pet store, you'll have a bank, different places where people can where people can get trained sort of on how to work how to navigate the real world.
And we'll be bringing the community in, so there will still be an integrated setting because we have 800 teen volunteers, for example, who work every week at the with the Friendship Circle, and we bring in families and typical kids for birthday parties and things like that.
We have to have you do a live thing from Lifetown once it's open.
Yes, be happy to do it.
We have to do that. And there'll be another bookstore there. So we're running out of time. How can people support this bookstore and this movement and buy books from you guys?
Well, you're welcome to shop at wordsbookstore.com. We'd love that. And you can also, thank you, and you can also email me at jonah@wordsmaplewood.com if you want to talk more about the bookstore.
I just think you guys are amazing. I want to visit or move to Maplewood, New Jersey. I can completely understand why they would give you an award. My goodness, you guys are amazing. Okay, we're out of time, but promise me that you'll come back and we'll do a live feed from Lifetown.
Sounds great.
Okay, fabulous. We adore you. Thank you for everything that you're doing. We're so excited. We'll have you back again.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. All right, you guys, we're totally out of time. And I just want to say that on tomorrow's show, what a great show we've got. Audrey Hughes is going to be with us from Free to Be. You're going to love, love, love hearing about this wonderful organization that helps find when a teen or an adult has to go and live someplace other than home, finds the perfect solution that's right for them. You're absolutely going to love this. And then we've got Alex Lynn back on the show. He is the young man who started Autism Rocks. They're having their 3rd annual concert this weekend. So he's going to be here with us to talk about what's happening. It's at the Promenade this year, so that's going to be really exciting. And then, of course, we have Bonnie Yates, who's going to be answering more of your legal questions during Legal Matters. And I will be back here with jargon and everything else. So what a great show. I'm so excited. But thank you for being here with us. I will see you tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.